So this is going to be a pretty low-key video, but I'm going to share something with you today that I think some people are going to hear. They're going to try the same thing, and it's going to really make a huge difference in their life, because I was struggling with this issue, and I did this, and I honestly feel like I am years younger after I discovered what was going on with me. So let me go ahead and let me tell you the story of what I started to experience. I sit at a computer a lot because I work in technology, and on the hand that I use my mouse with, my right hand, I started to notice that my middle finger looked like it was swollen. It was about 50% bigger than the middle finger on my left hand. And the issue that I really started to have, though, was when I would go to make a fist, my middle finger would not want to bend. And if I tried to physically bend it by going like this, it felt like it was going to explode. It was just so tight in there, I didn't know what the heck was going on. So I figured I'd rest it. I've had trigger finger before, and at first I thought, man, maybe it's trigger finger. Normally trigger finger, though, you bend your finger and it won't straighten. My finger didn't want to bend. It just wanted to stay straight all the time. So I rested it for a few weeks. It didn't get any better. In fact, it got worse. The more that I would try to force my hand closed, the more it would hurt. I'd wake up in the morning and I would go to grab the bathroom doorknob or pick up my phone to turn off the alarm, and my hand just wouldn't work. I couldn't grab anything, and it was very painful when I tried to. Now, it started to get real scary because not only did that finger hurt, multiple fingers on my right hand started to hurt. In fact, 3 of them, my index finger and my ring finger, both of them started to hurt, and they didn't want to bend. I felt a lot of numbness in my hand, and then my left hand, I also started to have fingers that started to do the same. Now, I thought maybe I was starting to get arthritis or something, but then I started to have trouble when I was sleeping at night. My shoulders would ache, and then my knees started to hurt so bad that it would wake me up when I was asleep, and I couldn't fall back asleep because they hurt so bad. So it was started to be like every joint in my body started to absolutely ache to the point I couldn't stand it. But honestly, my hand not working was a huge thing for me because, I mean, obviously that's part of my livelihood. It's part of what makes your life enjoyable, is being able to do things and not have that pain. So I started to kind of think about what the heck has changed in my diet. Maybe it's something that I'm eating that's caused a problem. Nothing had changed, though. I had eaten relatively the same for the last year or so, and my diet is pretty routine. So I started to do some research. Now, one bad habit that I had that I knew I probably needed to break before any of this was the amount of caffeine that I drank. Now, I made a video about a year ago that talked about how I drink about 500 milligrams of caffeine a day. And I know that's kind of the upper limit of what somebody should have, but I didn't think that it was really that big of a deal. I decided, though, that I was going to go ahead and break that habit. So that was the first thing that I decided to cut. I started to do research on caffeine, and actually there is a subset of people, when they drink caffeine, it really affects their joints, and they have what seems like rheumatoid arthritis, which when I looked up rheumatoid arthritis, that kind of seemed like what I started to have. Now, the other thing that I started to think of was maybe it is gluten. Now, my wife has been gluten-free for several years, and she went off gluten for different issues. Now, when she went off gluten, she did not know that she had any sensitivity to it. The doctor said, maybe you should try to go off gluten and see if it makes your issue better. It didn't make what the issue she was having better, so she went back on it. And the funny thing is, when she went back on it, all of a sudden then she realized she had an issue with gluten because her whole body started to do the same thing that mine was doing. Her knees would ache, every of her joints would ache. And so that's when she realized she had a gluten intolerance and she could no longer have gluten. So I thought, well, maybe that's it. I mean, I didn't go off gluten at this point, but I decided that I was going to go off it to see if it made a difference. So for my elimination diet, I went off gluten and I went off caffeine. So after 3 days of this diet, all of a sudden, my hand didn't hurt at all, and I could make a fist. My fingers swelling went down. My knees didn't hurt. My shoulders didn't hurt. My parts of my body that I didn't even know were hurt, all of a sudden felt better. And I seriously felt like I was years younger just from going off caffeine and gluten. So I wasn't sure, was it the caffeine or was it the gluten? So once I felt better, I decided I'm going to go ahead and test it, and I'm going to go ahead and have gluten. So for one day, I had 2 flour tortillas and I had 2 pieces of bread. And so that day I felt fine, but that night, all of a sudden, my hands started to hurt, my shoulders started to hurt, my knees started to hurt. So then I knew that gluten had something to do with it. So I went off gluten, things got better again. Now I didn't go back on caffeine. I wanted to break that habit anyway because I was already having issues with waking up with headaches and needing it. So breaking that addiction was hard enough. I wasn't going to go ahead and introduce more caffeine to test if that was the issue. Figured once I got off that, I'd just stay off of it. But, you know, going off of those two things made a huge impact in the way that I feel, physically for sure. Mentally, I think going off the caffeine has made me feel better too, because I'm not waking up with headaches or anything like that. So if you're having issues with your joints and you think that maybe it's just me getting older and I'm starting to have arthritis, try going off gluten, try going off caffeine, and see if it makes a difference for you. I mean, within 3 days, I felt a huge noticeable difference and I felt years younger. That's all I have for you in this one. I know it wasn't very exciting, but I really hope this helps somebody out there because I was starting to get really concerned that my life was just going downhill and that I was not going to be able to do the things that I wanted to do. Now that I've finally figured out what was causing me all these aches and pains, I'm so glad that I can eliminate it and avoid those issues. If you guys have any other comments you'd like to add to this, anybody else who's went through this, put it below in the comments. I love to hear other people's stories on this. Well, that's all I have for you in this one. I hope that people out there find this helpful and it makes a big difference to you. I'll see you in the next one.